Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and software solutions for businesses of all sizes. My name is Steve Boese. Workers being managed by algorithms is nothing new. Recently, a piece on Fast Company titled "Algorithms Control Workers, Here's One Example How" caught my attention as I was interested in some of the latest examples of how advanced technology is impacting work in workplaces. The piece detailed how one particular online platform, named Talent Finder, aimed at connecting freelance workers with project opportunities, set its terms and conditions such that it resulted in somewhat unfavorable contracts for many of the freelancers on the site. While the specifics of the story about Talent Finder were interesting, what I took away from the piece more broadly was that the notion of algorithms managing work is really not that new at all. In fact, it's been happening for decades in many jobs and industries. How can I be so sure that's the case? Well, I'll share a little story about my first encounter with an algorithmic management system, although at the time I'm pretty sure we did not use the precise term algorithm. It was effectively that. And while it certainly wasn't AI, as that was not even a thing 35 or so years ago, but again, the specific terms shouldn't, and typically don't matter to workers, subject to management by whatever form of technology we're discussing. Okay, with that all said, here's the story. While I was attending college, I'd always have to work jobs during the summer breaks to earn and save up spending money for when I was at school, as my preferred college experience did not include working while I was otherwise occupied going to class, playing intramural sports, and quite frankly, trying to enjoy the heck out of the college lifestyle. I think it was the summer between sophomore and junior year when I landed a job working as an order selector in a large food and beverage distribution warehouse, on the third shift no less. Oh, and the main products distributed by this company were meats, cheeses, and juices, so the entire warehouse was essentially one massive refrigerator that was cooled to about 37 degrees Fahrenheit. The job was simple, if kind of physical. Using a battery-powered pallet jack, I'd gather up the products from all over the warehouse that were needed to fulfill a customer order, stack them up neatly so that they would not fall over during shipment and delivery, and then set them up at a designated location in the warehouse for loading onto a delivery truck. Each order would be something like 30 to 60 items or so, and once you dropped off a completed order at the loading dock, then you'd return to the central office to pick up the next order and repeat the process all over again until the end of your shift. Well, the algorithmic part comes in is that when you started an order, you would swipe your employee badge in a kind of a time clock system and then type in the order number that you were assigned. The system calculated what was the expected length of time in minutes, also known as the standard, that it should take to review the order, drive all over the warehouse finding and stacking the items in the order, delivering the order to the correct loading dock, and finally returning back to the office to complete the order by swiping your badge again at the time clock device. Once completed, the time clock would display four numbers: the actual time it took to complete the order, the standard or the expected time to complete the order, the difference in minutes between the actual and the standard, and then the percentage of the standard you attained. So for example, if you started an order at 1:30 a.m. and completed it at 2:12 a.m., and the standard for that order was 37 minutes, what you'd see when you swiped complete on the order was actual, 42 minutes, standard, 37 minutes, difference, -5. This would be a negative number since it took longer to complete the order than was the standard. And finally, percent of standard, and in this case, 88%. Since you took 5 extra minutes, the performance on that order was below standard. Standard would be 100% if it took you exactly the 37 minutes to complete the order. And it was possible to be better than standard if you completed the order faster than the expected amount of time. But in practice, well, at least for me, that did not happen very often. And as I mentioned, once an order was completed, you'd grab the next one and start the process all over again. And you would get time out for breaks and for lunch, but the system would also track downtime. In other words, any time during your active shift where you were not clocked in on an active order. In a typical 8-hour shift, that would probably add up to another 15 or 20 minutes or so. Why all of that matters is because the overall evaluation and your compensation depended on your ability to achieve certain levels of performance against the standard. Every order you selected was measured against the standard, and your weekly performance was compiled and measured. And if you fell short of your assigned goals, And for summer workers like me, the goal was about 80% of standard, as I recall. But if you came up short, you could get reprimanded, placed on probation, where you were given 1 week or so to get back to your goal percentage, or even be terminated at the end of the week. And for the regular full-time staff, they were tracked in the same way, and they did have to maintain performance at or above 100% of standard. If they dipped below 100% for long enough, no matter for what the reason was, they would end up being terminated. The only meaningful performance and employment metric was attainment of the goal or the standard, and that was calculated, measured, and reported by this algorithm. Nothing else mattered, and this was happening at this specific employer back in the late 1980s. So seeing the recent Fast Company piece about algorithms managing workers naturally made me think about that long ago job in the refrigerated warehouse on the third shift, racing from aisle to aisle trying to stay one step ahead of the standard set by the algorithm. Being tracked, managed, measured, and held accountable to the machine is a fact of life in many jobs and has been for a really long time, especially for jobs on the front line of work. Maybe some of the recent attention and potential backlash about algorithmic management and worker monitoring is more in the news because advances in AI and other technologies like digital monitoring tools are now allowing the algorithms to work their way into more professional and technical kinds of work. Maybe it's because tools like generative AI, with its ability to create text, images, video, graphics, and more, are becoming more of a threat to many professional occupations, and because of that, it's getting more attention. But regardless of that, having to answer to the machine has been a difficult and challenging part of work for a really long time. And for those of us who spent time stacking cases of orange juice at 3:15 in the morning, it maybe seems like what comes around goes around. We will continue to cover the important topics and trends in the world of work here on the HR Happy Hour Media Network. That's it for the Workplace Minute, powered by H3 HR Advisors.